Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Child of God podcast. Honestly, y'all, the mindset was so not out of it today, but it was weird because I started recording the podcast and then I don't know, something just happened and I realized that I wasn't in the right mindset or space to record the podcast. So I just removed myself from the environment. Now I'm back and ready to go. So let's get started. You guys always start with a prayer. So, dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you guide my voice. Also, guide what you allow us to see today in the scripture and allow us to take in what you want and feel as if we need from this so we can gain a better understanding of who you are to us. Amen. So, as you guys know, we are talking about Abraham. And to be honest, it has been a long way coming because, with the new year, we was talking about a lot of other stuff. But the journey through the Bible will not go on the back burner ever. And so let's get straight into this. So we are starting off at Genesis 14, a continuation from the last journey in the Bible. And to be honest, this is so strong, so powerful. We're starting right back at a war between Sodom and the Rephaites and the Zuzites and the Emites and just like a lot of different countries we're seeing war in. And so what had happened was the king of these countries marched out through their battle lines to the valley of Sodom, which is an area where Lot was. And so now the valley of Sodom was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them and the rest fled on the hills. And so the four kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. Okay, so I know what we're thinking. Now, whose fault is this? This is completely Lot's fault, because if Lot got his act together and was like, I need to stay with the family. Obviously, my family is being guided by God. But no, he decided to separate himself. He wanted to go to the better part of the land, like we talked about last episode. The fact that the grass is greeny and, the fields look great does not mean that it is exactly what it was. It doesn't mean that that's what is intended by God for you, or does that mean that that's the direction that God has intended for you? But Lot thought so. Lot thought wrong. And so what is Abram to do now? What would you do if you found out, your cousin, might as well say your brother, how close they were? He called him his brother. What would you do? Would you go and, look for Lot? Would you go and say, okay, where's Lot at? I have no idea. I don't know if I would go into war, but obviously, actually I would go into war, because if God's behind me, who can defeat me? And that's what Abram did. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So he was not about to play about his family, regardless of how his family treated him, regardless of his family separating themselves from him. He did not come to play. And so during the night, Abram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and the other people. And that was on period. Now, first of all, I would love to have the confidence of Abram to just be like, you know what, let's move. There was no... And one thing I did realize about Abram in this entire time, and I think that's one of the reasons why God chose him, is solely because of obedience. And he has no hesitation for doing what's right and doing what he was told to do. And sometimes I feel like we need that in our lives. Why do we always hesitate? Because we're so worried about outside factors, similar to the faith conversation, where we always hesitate because we're worried about the anxieties of life and what could happen instead of taking a leap of faith. But I feel like Abram's was mixed with faith and strictly fear of God. And I think everybody says faith over fear, but faith is never over the fear of God. I strongly believe that, because the one thing that you are supposed to fear is God. The moment that you don't fear God is the moment that you don't believe that he's all powerful. The moment that you don't believe that he can do any and everything that he wants to do. And not necessarily fear as in a negative connotation, because, you know, people will be like, oh, well, why would you want to fear something? I fear my father, and it's simply because I know that it's out of respect. Fear out of respect versus fear out of sorrow and worry and shame. Two different things. Because even within fear of God, he still loves you, he still cares for you, and he still takes care of you amidst your mistakes or amidst your doubts. And we see that here with Abram as well. But after Abram returned from fighting, the king of Salem brought out bread and wine, and he was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abram, saying, Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Abram gave him a tenth of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom with raised hand, I have sworn an oath to the Lord, God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread of the strap of a sandal, that you will never be able to say, I made Abram rich. And I completely get that, because God is so powerful. He doesn't need, I mean, not to sound weird, but some measly human, some mundane king to be sprouting around false sayings, talking about, oh, I made Abram rich because I gave him this or that. No, God is Abram's full provider. And then, so the Lord, after this, completely renews his covenant with Abram. He says, after this, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Don't be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward. And I think, like I was saying earlier, it's not a fear of, like, I'm scared or I'm ashamed. I think it's more of a fear of respect. And hopefully, like, as I was trying to get guest speakers, but hopefully I can find a guest speaker that I can fully gain, you know, that true, a better way to explain it. But don't be afraid, Abram. So basically, he's making him feel comforted. I am your shield, your very great reward. And this great reward comes from Abram's obedience. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? And Abram said, You have given me no children, so a servant in my household will be the heir. Now, Abram was coming through a little snappy, a little snazzy. I mean, he straight up said, like, what will I inherit if I don't have any kids? Which was obviously a big thing back in those days. But then the word from the Lord said, This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir. He took him outside and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. Then he said to him, So shall your offering be. God knows sure as well that Abram cannot count those stars. And Abram knows sure as well that he can't count those stars. So he knows how much or how great his reward and his inheritance will be. I mean, we have people way along the line. In Matthew, Luke, Mark, John, they all are talking about being the children of Abraham. So it's so cool, like, actually reading the Bible and going through the Old Testament and going into the New Testament and realizing that everything that God said, every promise that God made, he fulfilled. And unfortunately, the bad promises or the ones where, you know, people like Sodom and Gomorrah was gone. They were fulfilled too. And he is a God that fulfills his promises, whether we like it or not, whether we want a different promise or not. And so Abram's still questioning the Lord and saying, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So the Lord said to him, bring me a goat, bring me a ram, bring me each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. And he gets all this stuff, and the sun goes dark and darkness comes over him. And then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. Now we all know why they were enslaved and mistreated. We'll get onto Exodus and Moses in the wilderness and see why exactly they were mistreated. But even so, in mistreatment and even so in slavery, God destroys their captors, their oppressors, and still strives for them to be just his chosen people, the people that he loves so much. And it says, you, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites and has not yet reached its full measure. The Lord continuing on, saying, on that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, to your descendants I give this land from the, I'm going to say Wadi of Egypt to the great river of Euphrates. And I know he gave them a lot of land, because when they were talking about it, when they were conquering cities in the journey of Moses and the Israelites, well, Moses obviously didn't get to enter the city, but when Joshua and God carried them in, there were so many places that they conquered, so many promises being filled, and it was absolutely amazing. And so we're going into Genesis 16 verse 1, where now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. This was just... Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. But she knew she was pregnant. She began to despise her mistress. And I was just like, what happened to waiting? But then I realized that I am so impatient. I can't even say what happened to waiting. And the thing was, God made fathers of the house, the man of the house. And the weirdest part about it was that the fact that Abram just did this, like, no questions asked. He did not object. He was not like, you know, babe, I don't think this is the right call. You know, God already promised us a son. Let's just wait for that son to come. You know, let's just, you know, sit here, chill, relax, you know, just enjoy this prosperity while it is. But no, Sarai want to be stirring up drama in the household between the whole love triangle of Hagar, her, and Abram. And now Hagar hate her. And it's just like, what's going on? And then Sarai said to Abram, you are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. And I'm just like, do I play this blame game often? Like, am I out here just blaming people after I tell them to do something? Because that was so weird. I was just like, Sarai, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What this is not the conversation we had 2 nights ago when you was all about, oh, just go and do this and I'll build my family through her, this, that, woody, woody, wood. No, this was not the conversation of a couple weeks ago. And so I was just like, And Abram said, your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think is best. Which is right, because you wanted to do this in the first place, so you fix it. And I do think Abram should have taken a different stance, but obviously I can't change all of that now. But I was just like, was she serious? All of this back and forth and stuff like that. And so Hagar ran away, and the Lord found her, and the Lord told her, go back to your mistress and submit to her. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. And honestly, what I love the most about this part is, despite what happened, and despite this is being a form of adultery, like Jesus said, he came here for the fatherless. And not that Hagar and her soon-to-be son Ishmael was fatherless, but it was the fact that they were in a place that they weren't wanted. They were in a place where, you know, there was another son coming, and there was no space for them anymore. They were not an heir. They were not important. And so God literally was like, listen, I'm going to provide for you. Just go back. And everything is always about time. The angel of the Lord also said to her, you are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. So he's listening. He's always hearing you. He's hearing when you're going through the tough times. He's hearing when you're crying. He literally heard when Hagar was crying and ran away. He knows your pain, and he's not going to just sit by and allow you to be in pain. And he will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers. Now that sounds a little like a rough life. Obviously, being a mistress can lead to a rough life in the Old Testament. I think it is a lot different back then. A lot of the things that you will see in the Old Testament is very wild. It really is, especially going into the Sodom and Gomorrah era. It's wild. And so she gave this name to the Lord, who spoke to her, you are the God who sees me. For she said, I have now seen the one who sees me. And I know this is a stray off topic, but during mental health, you always hope that there's someone who's looking at you, who sees your pain, who understands what you're going through. And it really feels like no one does. It really feels like you're just walking through this world alone, without anyone who truly understands what you're going through and what pain you feel on the inside, that inexplicable pain that you continuously feel, especially with depression and anxiety and multiple mental health disorders. And then you see here that he is the God who sees me. He is the one who sees me, and he sees you. He always sees you. He sees everybody. Like he told Abram, you will have, countless, in our terms, countless stars as inheritance. You think he can't see everybody on the planet and watch everything that you're doing? He sees you, and this is just a confirmation that he does. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had born. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael. Now I realized that in this time of Abram and Abraham, they focus on his age heavily, okay? And I think it was for a reason. It's something that we all try to say, that, oh, age is the reason. I'm too old for God to call on me. I am too old for God to use me. I am too young for God to use me. I am not knowledgeable for God to use me. But it's that exact same perspective that he finds valuable enough to want to use you and to put you out there so that you can spread his word and explain to others what he is to you as a father and you as a child of God. And so continuously throughout this story, we see Abram's age. And it's because God can do beyond our human lengths or beyond our human time and age Like that, it means nothing. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you and will greatly increase your numbers. So 2 things. He said, walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Now, the be blameless part, I was just like, be blameless. That means no one can put blame on you. Now, Sarah already put blame on Abram for getting Hagar to despise her, even though, we know what happened. But that's one of the questions that I had from reading this. Like, what does that look like to be blameless? It's definitely not faultless. Am I just simply doing what you say and nothing that you tell me to do, anyone can really blame me for, because I'm just following your lead. I'm being obedient. And so that's how I took that. But hopefully going through further conversations with each other, I'll definitely get some more feedback. Let me know down in the comments what it means to you to be blameless and to walk before God faithfully. Abram fell face down, and God said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Okay, here we are. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of many nations, and I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. Now, what beckoned this transformation? So obviously we have obedience. We have the fact that he's been walking faithfully before God. We have the fact that Abraham was chosen. But I also feel like he's currently going through the adversities and the lessons that he needs to learn before he can truly gain everything that God has given him. He's going through his glow up process right now. Even at 99, he's strutting. And so he's having this conversation with God, and he's like, the whole land of Canaan where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you. The covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of covenant between me and you. Now, if you ask the weird question of why are people circumcised? Oh, where did it originate from? Here you go. It is a covenant between God and Abraham, and it is to be done for his inheritance for males 8 days after they are born. And so God also said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah. I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her so that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her. Abraham fell face down. He laughed and said to himself, will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And like I said, we're back to this age, because at that time we think, oh, well, I'm 90, I'm barren, I can't have no kids. Abraham is 100. Can I even looking at 100 years old now, I mean, people barely make it to 100 now. So like just visualizing someone who was 100, and obviously it would be different from back then, but it's just like you can see how they were thinking in their mindset that this is impossible. Like, there is no chance. And how am I going to be running around chasing after a 3-year-old at 103? I got bad joints, maybe a little bit of back pains. Like, it's just hard to fathom that I'm going to be a dad at 100 years old. I'm already a dad, and that didn't really go anywhere because, you know, the Hagar left. And so, and Abraham said to God, if only Ishmael might live under your blessing. God said, yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son and will call him Isaac, period. Completely ignored the whole Ishmael issue, because he said, I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. This is Isaac he's talking about. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Like God says, he hears you, he sees you. I will surely bless him. I will make him fruitful and will greatly increase his numbers. He will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year. Period. There's a timetable and all. He was like, listen, this is about to happen next year. Whatever questions you got, I don't care. The age thing, I don't care. It's gonna happen next year. Stop laughing, stop joking around, get your act together, do some squats. It's happening. And so, on the very day Abraham took his son Ishmael and all those born in his household bought with his money every male in his household and circumcised them as God told him. And you see, like, immediately, if Abraham is given a task, he does it. He is very obedient. He's very faithful. And that is why this covenant, and that is why he was chosen, because of his characteristics of obedience to God in itself is what enabled him to receive all of these blessings. And so then Abraham and Sarah has 3 visitors. And so the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of day. He saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. And he said, if I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get you something to eat, so you can be refreshed, and then go on your way now that you have come to your servant. Very well, do as you say. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. He said, bake some bread. Get this water together. And they asked, where's your wife Sarah? And he said, they're in the tent. And the one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now, I just finished saying, stop laughing and giggling, because anything that God says is going to happen is what's going to happen. Sarah still laughing and giggling. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Yes, you will. Stop questioning it. If someone said, I'm going to give you $1 million, are you going to question it? I mean, okay, I might, maybe. No. If God himself said, I'm giving you $1 million, no, I'm not questioning it. I'm not saying nothing to it. Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. What would you like me to do with this $1 million? Oh, yes, you want me to do this, do that, do this, let this prosperity in your family. Thank you, God. Thank you. That would be my response. There's no laughing, no giggling, no nothing. And so then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? I'll return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Period. Done. He asked a question. There is no answer, because nothing is too hard for God. That was a rhetorical question. And so Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. But he said, yes, you did. Yes, you did laugh. Don't try to lie about it now. We all heard you. Sarah was wilding out here. I mean, I'm being honest. She was wilding. And so then those 3 visitors were actually on a mission. They were on a mission from God to off the entire Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's the modernized version of it, because of their sins. And so, the outcry, the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sins are so grievous, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. But like I was saying, then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous of the wicked? Or the righteous with the wicked. Sorry, my bad. And I was just like, Abraham, really? the audacity, and clearly him and God had that relationship where he could ask him those questions, because, you know, I wasn't asking those questions. But I think that's what made him different. And he said, what if there are 50 righteous people in the city? Will you really sweep it away and not spare the place for the sake of the 50 righteous people in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you! Exclamation point. Will not judge of all the earth do right? The Lord said, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Then Abraham spoke up again. Now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord. So he knew he was bold. He knew that he took it far, but I think it's because Abraham has a genuinely good heart, and the Lord knew that. It wasn't necessarily a test or a sense of disrespect to the Lord, but it was a genuine question. Like, are you gonna let, if there are righteous people inside the city, are you gonna allow them to die? You know, people who worship you, who love you, are you going to allow them to die for the sake of the wicked, just because there are so much more wicked people in the city? And he was negotiating, to be honest. I mean, ain't nothing to negotiate with. God already knew the conversation that he was going to have with Abraham. But he said, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, though I am nothing but dust and ashes. And there it is. It's the fourth, I think it's the fourth aspect, the humility that Abraham has. When he met with the kings, walked through the king's towns and was like, you know, yo, Sarah, you're my sister right now, push. And he knew God was backing him. Obviously he wasn't fair for his life, but it was the fact that he wasn't like, oh, you know, God's power is my power. I don't have to be worried because God has it sorted out, which God does have it sorted out. But at the same time, he knew that anything can happen. And we see that later on. It's the fact that literally God can say anything and you have to follow through, no matter how, you know, how much it must hurt to have to follow through. You have to. And so he said, if I find 45 there, he said, I will not destroy it. They went down to 40. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak. What if only 30 can be found there? He answered, I will not do it if I find 30 there. Abraham said, now that I have been so bold as to speak to the Lord, what if only 20? He said, for the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. Then he said, may the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there? He answered, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. When the Lord had finished speaking with Abraham, he left, and Abraham returned home. Abraham really was trying to get Sodom and Gomorrah to just, please, I'm literally fighting for y'all. I want y'all to not be blasted away in fire and flames, but there's only so much I can do now. And he was bold enough, and he was just like, please, this is a little risky, going before God, saying all this stuff. Abraham was obviously a different breed. That's all I can say. And so Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed, you know. The angels arrived at Sodom, and Lot was sitting in the gateway. He took them in. He said, my lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning. They said, no. They answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. And then in Genesis 19, this is, I mean, ridiculous. In Genesis 19, when they said, but before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house around, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Now we all know that know means something a little bit different in the Bible. You know, when they said Adam knew Eve, this is insinuating sex. And so they basically was like, bring these men out, not knowing, I mean, you shouldn't be doing this regardless. So, I mean, if they're treating strangers they don't know like this, how are they treating people in the rest of the city? And so now this was a shocker. Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them, but don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Now, obviously, I can't get behind giving my daughters to strangers. So Lot, it's not looking too good. I mean, I get you trying to protect the Lord's angels. I get that. But what? Anyway, so they said, get out of our way. And it was ridiculous. The men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house, and they said, get out of this city. It's gone. We're trying to spare your life, Lot, because of how well you treated us. You taking us in, leading us into your protection. But they asked him, do you have any sons, daughters, anyone else in the city to bring along with you? Get them out of here, because you're going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against his people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. He's telling them, hurry, leave. No one wants to leave. And he said, with the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife, your 2 daughters who are here. You will be swept away when the city is punished. And then when he hesitated, the man grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, flee for your lives, don't look back, don't stop anywhere in the plain, flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. The Lord said to them, no, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me and spared my life, but I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me. I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run. It's small. Let me flee to it. It's very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. He said, okay. Now, why is it that Lot's wife is out? They said, don't look back. What don't you get by don't turn around? Now, I know, we always, like during our fast, we know, don't look at the food. Don't look at the food, because we know what happens when we look at the food in temptation. But yes, I know you're curious, but it's about to burn. It's about to be an ash. You can look at it later from afar in the mountains, deep within the mountains. Like, what are you doing? And so, obviously, we see Lot's wife look back and pillar of salt. And so that's just the life she lived, and she's still there to this day. Sucks, but you shouldn't look back. God spared your life already. What are you looking back for? And I think that's the similar question, that I've been having. Like you see similar themes now as you would see in the New Testament, where they're like, once you've changed your life, once God has shed his mercy, saved your life, why are you looking back? Don't look back to your old life. There's a song called Familiar by Madison Ryan Ward, and she's like, I can't look back after you should. I mean, it's very hard not to. It's just like the sins of the world they run after you. And so it's just like they're pulling you to look back, and it's a constant struggle not to look back, but try your hardest. Don't look back. There's nothing there for you. Looking forward and seeing the prosperity that God has for you is the most important thing when your life has been changed. And so the city was destroyed. Now we all know that this part in Genesis 19:30 verses 36 is very weird. Things got weird, and I'm gonna just say it. Lot's daughters got him drunk and had sex with him. I'm leaving it at that. I was very cringed. We're moving on, because I don't know what was going on there. And so now Abraham moved on from there into the region of Negev and lives between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar, and there Abram said of his wife Sarah, she's my sister. Then Abimelech, I think I pronounced that good, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." And God made all of his women barren. In his courts, he was like, "Listen, God, Abraham told me that was his sister. I did not go after a married woman. That was his sister." And God was like, "Yeah, that's why I didn't let you touch her." Yeah, God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me." So obviously, without God's power, honestly, I don't know what I would have done in my life, because I feel like there has been multiple times God has kept me from sinning. Multiple times. And whether that be conviction or simply just slapping me across my head and being like, "Janika, that's not exactly what you should be doing right now. That's not a good call." Like, all of that is clearly. And I think people are like, "Oh, well, you know, I make my choices, and I was like, I know God gives us free will, but I think sometimes he just looks at us and he's like, "Yeah, don't do that." And so that's what God did for Abimelech, because if he didn't, Abimelech was going to be in trouble. His nation was going to be in trouble. His wives, kids was going to be in trouble. And so he said, "Return her. And if you don't return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die." And so early the next morning, Abimelech was like, "Hey, Abraham, you told me that was your sister. What are you getting me in trouble with God for? The Almighty Creator of heavens and earth, you're getting me in trouble with? No. Take your wife. I will not allow you to have me given a death sentence." And Abraham replied, "I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother. She became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother." Abimelech said, "Yeah, I don't want no problems with you. So here's some sheep and cattle. Here's some people. Here's your wife. And my land before you. Live wherever you like. Do what you want to do. Just don't have me involved. Don't get me involved. Don't get me involved." And so Sarah said, "I'm giving your brother 1,000." To Sarah, he said, "I'm giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated." What's going on with my reading? And so then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves so they could have children again. God was like, "Yeah, that was it, and that was all." And so the birth of Isaac. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. And that's on period. What? She second guessed, and he still did it to show her that, and by all means, he don't need to show nobody nothing, but he does what he has promised. And Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the very time God had promised him. Abraham was 100 years old when he had his son. Isaac was born to him. And this definitely speaks to those who are obviously up in age and wants to have kids. I know it's always going to be a risk, but I definitely would always say pray, ask God for guidance, because if he does it for Sarah, he can do it for you. Now, if it wasn't meant in your purpose in your life, then so be it, but you never know. And so God said to him, "Do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." So Sarah was like, "Yeah, this son Hagar don't want him around. Don't want to see him. I have my son now. I don't need these people around," which I don't think that was very nice of Sarah. But she was like, "Get rid of him." And that was God's response to him. He's like, "Don't be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Like, listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." So, unfortunately, Hagar went into Beersheba, and they were clearly on the brink of starvation, and she just couldn't watch her son die. And as she sat there, she began to sob, and God heard the boy crying. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." And it's the same thing. Comforted in times of adversity, God will always be there. He will always hear your cries. It might not look good right now. And I personally have seen this. It might not look good right now, but who is to say it won't look good in 3 months? Who's to say it won't look good in a week? Who's to say it won't look good in a day? Who's to say it won't look good in a year, 2 years, 30 years? But the point is, it will look good, and you will go through things and you'll be like, this was so worth the wait. So worth the wait. And so then God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And one thing this is also showing is the fact that God will always provide. In the midst of adversity, in the midst of heartache, in the midst of you being in fear for your life, he will always provide. And so we get to Genesis 22, and this is the hard part, guys. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to Abraham, "Here," and Abraham said, "Here I am," he replied. And I just want to be, I don't know, I definitely think I would be very fearful if God talked to me, but I do want that experience, and I want to answer, "Here I am." I do, I really do. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as burnt offering on a mountain, and I will show you." I do not want him to talk to me when it's something like that, though. But like I said, Abraham was a different breed. Abraham was also foreshadowing to what we will see in the New Testament with Jesus Christ. And so here we see Abraham got up, loaded his donkey, no complaints, no questions, no laughs, no whatever. He didn't say, "God, now that you've given me this son, you want to take him away." He did not complain. He was not like, "No, I don't want to do this. I love him too much. No, woo, woo, woo." And I know I've been saying woody woody woo a lot. And so he said, "Yes, my son," because he was talking to Isaac, and he was just like, "Father." Yeah, and then Abraham said, "Yes, my son. The fire and wood are here." Isaac said, "But where is the lamb for burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know if I would be able to keep my cool in such a situation, but just walking up with my son, just being like, "Yeah, he'll provide. He'll provide. He has provided. It's right there. It's my son." But I just can't imagine the feelings that Abraham had. It's a certain level of love for God to deny your flesh, your feelings, because feelings really do take over heavily, and we basically rely on our emotions to decipher how we feel. But just renouncing how we feel and just doing what we're told, being obedient, following the mission, that is what God wants. To walk before him faithfully and not asking no questions. And they reached the place God had told him about. Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." I don't think that's how he said it. And Abraham replied, "Here I am." "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." And like I said, maybe it's a fear of duty. Respect and duty is the fear that God wants us to have for him. To be fully obedient and not ask any questions is what it means to fear God. And so, Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns, and he went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide," and to this day it is on the mountain, the Lord it will be provided. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time, and he said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this, and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. And it's that same theme of obeying God. And I know it's like, people are always asking, well, obey him to what extent? Obey him when you want to obey him, as well as when you don't. When you or your flesh is telling you, no, I don't want to do this. Obeying him when you have to give up things. Obeying him when you have to sacrifice everything. And I'm saying this knowing that probably, highly, most likely, it would be super hard. It's very much like when Nebuchadnezzar, the rich man, came to Jesus and asked him, I follow all the commandments, what else do I have to do? Jesus said to give up everything, sacrifice everything, give it all to the poor. He couldn't do that. He was asked to give up his son. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And the thing is, it's just like, what was going through Isaac's head? And I feel like God found favor in that in itself, because you raise the child up that the child asks God no questions. The child is knowledgeable to know not to ask God any questions. You can imagine laying on a sacrifice bed. You know you want the wooden sticks, and your father's about to kill you. And no, just quiet, no questions, no nothing. Just, I'm ready to go. Like, yeah. And so I feel like it's a different level of commitment that we're all just required to follow. I mean, obviously now the sacrifices have been lifted because Jesus was sacrificed, but what is God asking you to do that you don't want to do? What is God asking you to do, and asking in a way that asking you to be obedient that you don't necessarily want to do, that you think is very unfavorable to you in your mundane life? And how can you actually sit there and say, God, here I am? It's a lot. And so and the thing is, if looking into what Abraham was doing, I want to believe that his perspective may have lined with, it was you who blessed me with this son, so obviously you can take him away. You blessed me with him. How can I take the gift back? Without God, he would never have had that gift in the first place, to be honest. And so with that perspective, it might have been easier for Abraham to say, like, you gave me this gift, let me give it back to you, because I don't love this gift more than I love you, God. I don't. I would prefer to continue the rest of my life loving you and having lost my son and sacrificing my son for your love than to keep my son and lose your love. Than to keep my son and lose the fact that if he is the God who can gift me with the son, take away a son, he can gift me with another one. And I think maybe that sits really hard for parents, because once you have a kid, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is the most important thing in my life. No, God gave you that child. And so that child is now is a gift from God, but you have to remember that you need to love God, the giver of all gifts, the giver of life, the giver of creation, his love over everything, and raise that child in the same perspective and the same way. But thank you guys for listening. This was a extremely long podcast episode, but I definitely thought that this Abraham story needed to just be here and talked about. And so thank you for watching. I hope you guys walk before God faithfully, obeying his every will and his way, being humble, and remaining a child of God. I'll see you guys later.